Productions.
So what we're looking at here, guys, is some pretty rare footage. This is from February the 6th, 1994. Now, before you go, hey, this isn't rare, I've seen this before. Yeah, this clip has been on YouTube for quite a few years now. Most of you have probably seen it. There are some that wouldn't have seen it either. But either way you look at it, this is a rare piece of footage. It was taken from a guy just on his camcorder or something. It was a show that Nirvana were playing with the Buzzcocks. As I say, this was February 6th, 1994, right at the start of Nirvana's European tour, a tour that Kurt Cobain, I might add, did not want to go on. He was not happy about going on this tour at all. And of course, we all know what happened just a few weeks after this footage was taken in early March. That is where Kurt would play his final ever show with Nirvana. He got sick, he got bronchitis, and we had that whole Rome situation. That happened just a few weeks after this footage was taken. So as we see there, Nirvana had a 10 o'clock to 11:30 slot to play. Now this footage that you're watching here, this was actually taken before the show began. Kurt had come backstage and he just wanted to meet up with the Buzzcocks, and some guy captured it on film, so it's pretty rare footage, really. I even wonder if Kurt knows he was being filmed. It's hard to say, but make up your own mind on that one. So at this point in Kurt's life, things weren't exactly running smoothly. Him and his wife, Courtney Love, were definitely having some problems. Things weren't exactly smooth sailing in the Nirvana camp. There would be band practices scheduled and Kurt just wouldn't be showing up for them. The communication between the band members it was all kind of starting to fall apart a bit around this time. And as I mentioned, this European tour that Nirvana were doing to promote In Utero, Kurt just did not want to be on it at all. But apparently the band was going to lose a ton of money, and you get sued and stuff like that if you don't show up and do your shows. So they did it, and it ultimately led to the whole Rome situation, as I mentioned before. And yeah, things were just completely downhill from there. But the interesting part in this clip here is we have Kurt talking about the 1994 Lollapalooza Tour. Now, the Lollapalooza Tour took place between July and September of 1994 in the United States, and from all accounts and anything that I've ever read in print, Kurt did not want to do the Lollapalooza Tour either. That is common knowledge. It is something that Nirvana management wanted him to do. Even his bandmates wanted to do it as well. They thought it would be good for the band. His wife, Courtney Love, really wanted him to do it as well. Nirvana stood to make around $8 million from this tour, so it was going to be a big cash cow for them. Would set the band up financially and all that sort of stuff, but Kurt just didn't want to do it. He wasn't feeling up to it or whatever, and he wasn't in a good space at this time. And from anything I've ever read, Kurt didn't want to do that Lollapalooza tour, or the European tour for that matter. But in this clip, I have turned up the audio quite a bit, and you're going to clearly hear Kurt here talking about the Lollapalooza Tour and how the band actually are going to play it. Kurt is asked by one of the Buzzcock members, just casually, what are the band going to be doing next? What's Nirvana up to next? And Kurt clearly states that Nirvana are going to be playing Lollapalooza. Now, there are a ton of people talking in this clip, and the audio is pretty terrible, so I've done my best to get the levels up and try to figure out what these guys were saying, but it's all there for you to see, so check it out.
Seriously, don't.
Yeah. How's the Beastie Boys, the Smashing Pumpkins, the Breeders? No, I don't think so. Oh, we played with them a lot. Yeah. I got Savannah just No, their manager is Janet Dillon.
At the end there, just picked up on them talking about Sonic Youth and Kim Gordon. and Kurt says how she's a good person. Of course, Nirvana and Sonic Youth always got on well. As I say, the audio was pretty bad for that clip, but you can clearly hear Kurt saying there that Nirvana are going to be doing Lollapalooza, talked about playing with the Beastie Boys, the Smashing Pumpkins, the Breeders, all those guys are on the Lollapalooza poster. So I always thought that clip was pretty cool. It was always a rare clip. And just when I was watching it one time, I picked up on Kurt saying that. And it was just funny to hear him say that Nirvana were going to be doing Lollapalooza when anything I've ever read about it, he was always really against doing that tour. But he clearly says it there that Nirvana were going to do it. Was it just something he said? The question was put to him, what are you guys doing next? So he just said it for something to say, but in the back of his mind, he knew all along that he really wasn't going to do it. Was it that? So he wasn't being entirely truthful, or did he mean what he said there? Nirvana actually were going to play Lollapalooza. He changed his mind and he wanted to do it. But I'm going to read an excerpt now from the Kurt Cobain book. It's called Heavier Than Heaven. Some of you may have read it out there. So to let you know where we are, Kurt had just overdosed in Rome and had come back to Seattle. He only had a few weeks to live. This is about mid-March of 1994. About 5 weeks after that February the 6th clip we just saw when he said that he wanted to do Lollapalooza. The European tour had been postponed, but the band and crew were told to prepare for Lollapalooza. Kurt had never wanted to play the festival, and he had yet to sign the contract, but management assumed he'd yield. Nirvana had confirmed they were going to appear on the 1994 Lollapalooza, said promoter Mark Geiger. Nothing was in writing at that point, but they were totally confirmed, and we were working on finishing up the contracts. Nirvana's take of box office revenues would have been around $8 million. Kurt felt the offer wasn't fair. He didn't want to perform in a festival environment, and he simply didn't want to tour. Courtney felt he should take the money, arguing that Nirvana needed the career boost. He was being threatened with being sued for the shows he didn't do in Europe, Dylan recalled. Dylan's his friend. And I think he felt like he was going to be financially ruined. Rosemary Carroll, that is Kurt and Courtney's lawyer, remembered Kurt emphatically announcing he didn't want to play the festival. Everyone around him basically told him that he had to, in his personal life and his professional life, she said. So I just found it interesting how in that clip we just watched how Kurt pretty confidently and, reasonably happily said, we are going to be doing Lollapalooza. Here's the bands we're playing with, and we are going to be doing it. Which was kind of weird because anything I've ever saw he said about it, it was like, no way, he didn't want to do it. So, what do you guys make of that? Interesting to hear Kurt say that Nirvana were going to be playing Lollapalooza when he had always been so adamantly against it, so... And as I mentioned before, of course, Lollapalooza 1994 went ahead, of course, without Nirvana. Kurt, of course, passed away April the 5th. The shows took place between July and September of 94. Nirvana were scheduled or penciled in to be the headlining act of Lollapalooza that year. However, that went to the Smashing Pumpkins. And the rest, guys, is rock and roll history. But I always liked that footage of Kurt. It's like 8 weeks before he died, so it's pretty rare in that circumstance as well. Some of the last footage that was ever taken of him seemed in pretty good spirits to me. Not saying that means anything or doesn't mean anything, but it was a tour that he did not want to be on. It was like right at the start of that European tour. He looked okay, didn't he? I'm actually going to end it here with another clip taken from this same video. It's about Kurt's talking about peeing in the showers. It's quite funny. They all have a laugh about it, so we'll end on that. And thanks, guys, for tuning in. Be sure to put your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, and we'll catch you next time.
I showered. I felt better when I was dirty.
You took a shower and pee?
Sorry?
You took a shower, did you say?
Yeah, but I felt better when I was dirty.
Yeah, because people have been peeing in the showers all day.
A day? Well, I must admit, I was one of those people. There's a sign on the door, it said crew toilets, right? And it's just 2 showers. That's I just learned
What they think of the show.
what's it called? Sanitarios or something.